Hey, what's up everyone? Ben at ProFixer, and today we're going to be talking about how to repair the screen on an iPhone 11. We actually just had this one walk into the shop right about an hour ago, and we're going to repair the screen, and this is the first time that we've ever been inside of one. And so we're going to take you inside, show you what it takes to repair it, and guide you each and every step of the way. Everything that I have on my workbench that you can see is linked up in the description below. So feel free to check those links out, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button. But without further ado, let's get started on this iPhone 11. So some of the things that I use when repairing an iPhone 11 that I would use when I'm repairing an iPhone 10 series, like a 10R or regular 10 or 10S, is the blue heat mat. I use this for almost all my repairs. If I have to remove a seal, remove a battery, or do anything like that, it helps to soften up the adhesive to make the screen or the battery or whatever you're working on come out so much easier with less prying. This has been an absolute lifesaver. We turn it to 60 degrees, which seems like the key temperature when working on a variety of devices. Also, I do have my tool screwdrivers. These are actually two UUL. Pick those up from Injured Gadgets, linked up in the description below as well. And then I do have some tweezers. I do have the replacement screen and a little bit of alcohol and acetone with some Q-tips. Also, I do use a flat-edged razor that helps me get inside of the screen to lift it up without putting any kind of pry marks on the edge of the bezel. So those things I'll be using today. So first things first, when you open up one of these, you do want to go ahead and power off the device, which in order to do that, you'll hit volume up, volume down, hold the power button, and then you can slide to power off. This phone has been sitting on this heat mat for a few minutes now, so it is actually noticeably warm, which is completely okay, and that's exactly what we want. It's going to help us to remove the screen without causing any kind of damage to the frame and make it so much easier to lift up. So what you'll do is you'll go ahead and take a flat razor like this here, and you can actually insert it into the edge of the screen between the screen and the actual bezel. If you use anything thinner or anything thicker, it can actually scratch up the frame and cause some issues that way. So what we're going to do is we'll work that in just like that, and then we're going to lift up, just kind of pry backwards. Don't slide it. You want to pull it out and then reinsert and do the whole tilt back once again. Once you have this one side kind of lifted up a little bit, you'll go to the other side. And you'll just insert it and kind of pry back and hopefully not turn on the phone like I did just there. We'll have to turn it back off before we go any farther on it, as far as before we unplug the battery or unplug the screen. So we just kind of want to work down each side until we slowly loosen it up. And as long as the phone is pretty warm, it will come up a little bit easier. So we're going to power this one off once again. There we go. And the top of the phone sometimes is held in pretty difficultly. You can use the top and to kind of pry in a little bit. You don't ever want to go in too deep. The thing with the razor blades, they are sharp, so you do need to make sure that you don't push it in too deep and hit any kind of flex cables. But as far as we have this here, we're just using it as a pry tool. So all it's doing is catching on the edge of the plastic and helping you to lift that up out of the metal frame. So right now we do have everything all pulled apart, and we can then lift the phone up and tilt it backwards like this here. Go ahead and pull off any of these kind of stretchy gaskets, and we'll take a look and see what it's going to take to open this one up. Like I said before, we've never actually opened one of these up, so I don't actually know where the flex cables go, but we'll start pulling some of these brackets off and see where we need to go. At this point, you can work directly on top of the mat if you'd like. For the purpose of this video, I am going to move this heat mat away, and then we're going to take the screen off and we're going to put it right back on the heat mat once we get that done. So go ahead and start taking out these screws here. And keep them in order. So place them off to the side of your workbench where they won't get in the way. And keep them in order. They do appear like they're all the exact same size, so that makes it nice. I'm going to lay the bracket oriented as it should be. And now it looks like we do need to remove this other bracket over here in order to access the battery. And the big thing with all this is you don't want to remove any of your, you don't want to unplug the screen without first unplugging the battery. I'll just try to pull this one out. If you need to use a little tweezer, that is okay as well. Lay that over there, and it looks like that is the battery. It's got a little flex cable there. Looks identical to that, and so now we're completely unplugged, and we can work on unplugging the actual LCD and digitizer cables. So we got those unplugged, and then now we need to take a look and see where this iPhone 11 front speaker assembly connects. All right, so it does look like it's, I cannot actually see where that goes. Oh, I do. So this one actually, it goes down here and then connects off to the side. So that won't be too hard to unplug. So we'll just go ahead and unplug that. I'm just using my fingernails here, that way I can definitely feel where everything goes. So got that disconnected. That was a little bit odd. The cable's so thin it kind of hides between the battery because the battery has a little fold on that side. But now everything is unplugged from the actual phone. I'm going to go ahead and set this off onto the heat map that we have set at 60 degrees. And I'm going to go ahead and remove all the rest of this adhesive. One of the things with brand new adhesive, it comes off a lot better than used adhesive. And the reasons for that is the oils from your hands and anything else that may have gotten on the phone is not affecting the adhesive like it normally would have. So the brand new adhesive, if you try to kind of peel or try to pull this down the adhesive, it will break it. But what you can actually do, you can actually pull from the back, and it should actually remove the adhesive a little bit easier. See, just like that. And it's almost like one of those command strips where you can hang a photo on the wall, and it peels up pretty nicely. So work down the other side. You want to make sure that you don't do anything to compromise the strength of the adhesive, because that will make it so much harder for you to remove it from the frame itself. Right here we're just pulling softly. Going to pull all the rest of this off, and we do want to make sure we remove this from the actual device. And there we go. And so if we look on this now, we can see that everything is, all the adhesive is removed from the device, and so there's no adhesive around the edges. So that is good. We're going to set that one off to the side, and we're going to start to prepare the new screen here. I do like to actually work on the heat mat. That will definitely help us out and make it so much easier for us to do the repair. So looking at the screws here, it looks like this top one is a tri-wing. So we're going to remove that. And it does look like all the rest of them are going to be Phillips or Cross. So going to take those out, keep them in the exact same order, because if they do vary in size, it will make it pretty difficult to match them back up, and you could actually cause damage if you put a long screw in a short spot, which is never good. So this here, we're going to take a look at this, and I believe this little speaker should flip over backwards. There we go. And we want to take this little bracket off of this sensor here. I'm going to set that down, so hopefully we can install that on the new one. Now we're going to take a little bit of alcohol, and we're going to drip it right here in the front and on this other sensor as well. As long as it's hot, it will definitely help to release some of the adhesive and make it easier to pull out of the device. So what you can do, you can take your tweezer and you can lift up a little bit there. And then you want to insert your tweezer and lift underneath that other sensor, just like that. And then your microphone at this point should just lift off pretty easily. And this screen itself, it is going to be pretty hot, so definitely keep that in mind. Be very careful as you now lift up this whole front assembly. This is going to be something that is paired for the Face ID, so you don't want to rip any of these flex cables or put any undue stress on them, which could damage them in any way. Go ahead and set this off to the side. And now at this point, it looks like everything on this particular screen has been removed that we'll need, as far as if it was a 10R. we're going to check the new screen and see if it has a back plate and kind of go from there. So this is a screen I picked up from Injured Gadgets, and it's one of their iPhone 11 in-cells, which it does look like it has a back plate on it. What you can do, you can go ahead and pull off this little blue cover off the top and also the bottom. Before we go and start putting anything on the device, you'll want to tighten any of the screws around here. This is common for any type of screen repair, but if you get anything that comes already pre-assembled, I always go through and just snug up the screws themselves to make sure that they're not going to back out on us. Always double check, your own work as well as everyone else's. And that will ensure that you don't get this device coming back, and also ensure that it's the highest quality repair possible. Alright, so all the screws there, they actually were very tight, so no issues on that part. And we're going to go ahead and lay this down, and we're going to go ahead and put this, the front assembly back on. What you can do, you can just lay it down like this. You can match up where the microphone would go and kind of tack that into place. And then insert these two sensors down into the front of their little bracket. Sometimes this can be a little bit difficult to line it up, but there we go. Got both of those in there, and now we're going to flip this over. And actually we want to put this little bracket on, which is a little bit difficult, but I think we can do it. There we go. It basically has a little bit of a like an upright, a little flat upright that you would connect it to, and you slide it back on, and that holds that particular sensor in place. As long as both of these sensors are completely flush in the housing, you'll be able to insert the other two or the other four screws. I always go ahead and put the tri-wing in first. It is the smallest, and seems like the most difficult to work with. Not that any of them are actually too difficult. Put that down there, and then now we're going to use our other screwdriver and put the rest of these screws in. And after you get these other screws in, we will be ready to apply the gasket to the housing of the iPhone 11. So just double check your work. Make sure that everything is lined up. Look at the camera holes and make sure that they're completely smooth or completely clean as well. And then that way, whenever you insert it into the housing, that the cameras have a way that they can look at without being obstructed in any way. So now we're going to go ahead and take our housing and put the gasket on there. Okay, so now go ahead and grab your housing, and we're going to go ahead and put the seal that goes around the edges back onto it. You don't need the heat mat for this particular portion. So what you'll do here is match up which way this aligns. And if you look at this here, this does have an extra sensor next to the camera. And so that is going to be the little bit larger size there. What you'll do is go ahead and peel the back off. And we're going to go ahead and line this up. I always like to line up in one corner. And then line it back up in the other side, and then follow the edge down, and this will help you get it completely flat. And at this point, it looks like it's completely on there, but you want to push it down to the bezel just a little bit, just to ensure that the adhesive is well pressed in there. Being careful around your front camera assembly. Using the back end of a tweezer definitely comes in handy and will help you to ensure that the adhesive is well pressed in. If it is, you'll be able to pull up the top cover on your adhesive, and it should leave the adhesive with its own appropriate cover on there. So that is exactly what we have here. So if you take a look at this on the top camera up here, you're able to see that it's completely pressed down and completely up around the edges. So this one's ready to go. So at this point, ensure that your battery is unplugged, because we're about to plug the screen in. We don't want to cause any damage to any of the backlight circuitry or anything like that. And now we're going to go ahead and plug in our front camera assembly, or the front sensor assembly. The easiest way that I've found that on these 10 series is to flip it forward and work like this on the phone. So that way the flex is a little more natural position. Then at this point you can flip the screen and you can go ahead and plug in the screen and the digitizer connectors as well as the battery. So there we go. Got those in there, and now go ahead and hold down the power button. On the newer devices, it always seems like if you hold down the power button a little bit longer than you had to before. I've had a little bit of a scare where you're working on a newer device, you hold down the power button for 2 or 3 seconds and it doesn't seem to power up. So you recheck everything like the battery and all that kind of stuff, and it all seems to be plugged in, and then you hold it down for about 5 or 6 and then it powers on. So that'll be a little bit of a difference if you're working on older devices and now you're working on the 10 series. They do seem to take a little bit longer to power up now. So here we go. Being that this is a replacement display, regardless of where it came from, if you would have had an iPhone 11 that was identical to this and merely swapped the displays, you're going to get this message here. This message says, important display message, unable to verify this phone has a genuine Apple display. That's really not that big of an issue. This is more or less just one of Apple's check systems. They compare the screen serial number with the serial number that came on the device. If it doesn't match, they're going to flag it with this particular message. This message will exist definitely and indefinitely through the settings, and it'll be on the lock screen for a few days after the repair. But what you can do is you can go ahead and test it and make sure that everything is all working, and as long as it is, go ahead and seal it up. The way that we seal these up is just like a 10R or a regular 10. You want to just put all these plates back on there. What we'll do is we're going to take this larger plate first, and we want to line this up. And now we're going to go ahead and take all of these smaller screws that we had before, and we're going to insert those back into the phone. And inserting them back in the same order, even though they appear all to be the same size, it's very important to make sure that you put them all back in the same order. Just in case one of them was a slight difference in size, you'll make sure that you put them all back in the right spot. All right, so we got 3 out of the 5 in there. Okay, this other one roll off to the side, so we're going to put that one in. And now we're going to put this battery connector back on, or this battery cover. And on these 10Rs, they make it extremely weird. Just the way that it's all plugged in, your display flexes are going to hang over the battery cover, which is pretty odd. A very unique way to do that, but it's still easy enough to put it all together. Just take your time. There's no rush. It's not a race. Just make sure you get the device put back together properly and that you can get it back to the customer. And make sure that it's fully working and fully tested. All right, so at this point we have all the screws back in there. We have tested all of the screws that came on the original assembly to make sure that they were tightened to the specs that they should be. Inserted the plates, put all those screws in. We have the adhesive that goes around the outer edges applied. And now we're going to go ahead and pull the adhesive cover on those. And we are going to go ahead and apply this screen back in. So if this comes with one piece, it will make it a little bit nicer. You kind of got to hover the screen a little bit as you're pulling that out. The biggest way to install this into the device is I always install the top first, and that helps you to get it aligned. And so what we do is you can use kind of 2 fingers up on the top here, and you can push in, make sure that it's butted up along the edge, and then kind of trade hands there a little bit, and then peek in on this side over here and make sure that your screen connector or your screen flexes aren't sticking out too far or caught in the adhesive. If they are, you'll need to make sure that you use the back end of your tweezers to kind of push those in and get them detacked from the adhesive if they do get stuck. On 10Rs, we really don't see that issue. It's more of on 10s and 10Ss. They seem to touch a little bit farther to the edge than the 10Rs and 11s do. So in this situation, we look like we're good. With the top still making sure that it's connected in properly, you can then go ahead and connect the bottom end and run your thumb up the side. There we go. And just working around the device itself, we can see that everything's sitting flush as it should be, and then now the device itself is all working properly. So go ahead and put your penalub screws back in, and afterwards make sure you do some test calls, test the camera, do all those things which we would do now, but the customer did not leave a passcode, so we're going to wait for them to come back. We're going to fully test it and ensure that everything works before we give it back to them. But now after we put the penalub screws back in, everything is ready to go. So we're going to put this one on the charger, call the customer, and wait for them to come by and then fully test it. I hope you enjoyed this particular video on how to repair an iPhone 11 screen. If you notice, it's very similar to an iPhone XR, which they both have their little bit of quirks and things like that. Everything in this particular video that I used, including these awesome screwdrivers you can find at Injured Gadgets, and which I've linked up in the description below. If you like this video, go ahead and give us a like button. If not, the other button seems to work okay too. Don't forget to subscribe, and also leave a comment with the next video you want to see on our channel. But appreciate y'all watching. I'll catch you on the next video.